Welcome, everybody. Let's start with the four great vows. The four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless fixations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. So today I'm going to talk about the four higher abodes. They are also called the Brahma Viharas. They're also called the apramanas, which means something that's not measurable. The four immeasurables, the four. The Brahma Vihara literally means the places where Brahma stays. The Brahma is considered the highest of gods, so the places where gods abide, if you will, and you know, these four are really, really useful in our regular everyday lives. So I've been working on them, so it's fresh in my practice. So that's one reason I'm talking about it, and I think you'll find it very useful in your practice as well. So these are abides. So abiding places, abodes, viharas. These are abiding places. And of course, in Chan, we talk about non-abiding. So I'd like to touch on that as well after touching on these four higher abodes. So what are these four places? You can think of these four places like as so they were like four rooms in your house. You have a room where you cook, you have a room where you eat, you have a room where you greet visitors, you have a room where you rest and go to sleep. So there are these different places in your room, in different rooms in your house where you do different things. You deal with different things. Maybe you deal with different things. And the four abodes are, you can consider them like that. There are like four different ways to be that are very skillful in dealing with different things. And so it's a very relative. It's on the relative side of practice, in the sense that it's how you relate to phenomena. It's how you relate to people and things in your lives. So, and the non-abiding side of it is that, the phrase that Huineng heard from the Diamond Sutra, without abiding anywhere, give rise to mind. So the non-abiding aspect of the four abodes is that when there is non-abiding, these four modes of being just happen. So there is no intentionality. It is just the way the Buddha mind works. So that's the non-abiding aspect of the four abodes. But as practitioners, when we are not in the non-abiding, these are very useful to cultivate, because this is an alternative to suffering or dukkha. So this is an alternative way of relating to phenomena. So the four higher abodes are loving kindness or metta. It's often, you hear the Pali words for these more than the Sanskrit. Loving kindness or metta. The Sanskrit is Maitri, which is where Maitreya, the Bodhisattva's name, comes from. So loving kindness or metta, and compassion or karuna. Karuna is the same in both Pali and in Sanskrit. And you have appreciative joy, or mudita. I think it's the same in Pali and Sanskrit as well. And then equanimity, or upeka. Upeka in Pali, upeksha in Sanskrit. So these are the 4 noble abodes, or the 4 higher abodes, or the 4 abodes of the gods. And we know in Chan, we especially emphasize equanimity and compassion. We don't often talk about loving kindness. We don't often talk about appreciative joy, though we do talk about Dharma joy. But these are 4 ways of relating, and it's about working with what comes up. So if you look at Maitri or Metta, this is loving kindness, and each of these is a, you can verbalize it a certain way. So the way you verbalize Metta or Maitri is, I wish that you are happy. I wish that you find the very root of happiness. So that's Maitri or Metta. So this is our wish for another person and another being in front of us to be truly happy. So it's a beautiful wish, and you can see the non-abiding aspect of it. So the abiding aspect of it, which is the taking this as your abode, taking this as the room in your house you're going to be at, where you're going to interact with certain people, certain things in your life, happenings in your life, right? So this is one way of functioning, if you will. This is one way of functioning. I wish you're truly happy. I wish you find the very root of full and complete happiness, right? It's a wonderful way of relating with people in your life. And now the non-abiding aspect of it is that this is a natural way of relating when you recognize the Buddha nature of the being in front of you, right? When you know that this person in front of you has Buddha nature, then wouldn't it be the most natural thing in the world to wish that they find, that they become aware of, that they operate from that awareness of Buddha nature? So that is, isn't that a no-brainer, right? So that's the non-abiding aspect of it. There's nothing to be constructed. It is simply the nature of relating to another being with this wish for them to be truly, truly happy. So that is loving kindness or metta. Karuna is about dealing or handling suffering in the world. So you see somebody hurting, somebody suffering. Then compassion or karuna is that wish that, oh, I wish that you would be free from suffering, that you would put an end to all suffering. It's kind of the flip side of the I wish you're truly happy. Whereas here you see that somebody is suffering, and you say, hey, I wish that you're fully free from suffering. And this is something that can be cultivated, and I'm going to talk about the cultivation of it. But also the non-abiding aspect of it is that this is simply a natural response to suffering. So when somebody is suffering, even though that suffering is coming from a mistaken perception of what is. And even though that suffering may be impermanent, still you want that person to not suffer. You want that being not to suffer. And this is simply the functioning of the Buddha mind, to want to alleviate suffering. So that's compassion. The third Brahma Vihara, or the third higher abode, is the third noble abode. The third noble abode is mudita, or appreciative joy. So mudita, appreciative joy, is like, I'm so happy that you're happy. Saying, hey, I'm just so happy that you're happy. And this may be a really commonplace happiness that you're seeing. This person is just super happy they got a great car. Or it could be, a very deep happiness that they are experiencing. It could be that they have, they were able to touch equanimity in their path. They were able to experience equanimity. You're really so happy for them. So this is this could be from your side. It could be just a mundane kind of a happiness in an altruistic way that somebody else is happy. It could be Dharma joy, that this person is truly getting it. They're truly getting the Dharma, that their practice is flourishing. So this is simply being happy that somebody else is happy. And it is also happiness about something that is beautiful, not just a person, something that is beautiful. Compassion could also be, compassion towards the world, towards maybe something not so going so well in nature. The same way, mudita, or appreciative joy could be an appreciation for and joy in the beauty of the world. So that's mudita. And mudita again could be simply Buddha mind, recognizing Buddha mind. There's the beauty of that and the joy in that. So that would be the non-abiding aspect of mudita. The fourth Brahma Vihara, the fourth noble abode, is equanimity. Now, equanimity is that capacity to be, I'm okay, even when I see something not going so well. I'm okay even when I see something going wonderfully well. So it's the ability to be present, no matter if things are going well or not so well. So you can actually see that equanimity is like an integral part of all the previous three noble abodes. So in order to wish somebody well, in order to when somebody's suffering, and you want them to be free of suffering, in order for you to say, oh, how wonderful that you are experiencing happiness. All of this, there's equanimity in all of this, because that the equanimity is what prevents these from being a clinging, suffering-inducing, mundane attitude, if you will. So what is noble about these attitudes, what is noble about these abides, comes from the equanimity that is kind of the background on which the other three arise. So you could think of it like, the yin and yang symbol. So in the dark, there's a little spot of the light, and in the light, there's a little spot of the dark. So if you think of the dark as loving kindness, as appreciative joy, as compassion, they have this little piece of equanimity in them. On the other hand, equanimity, it also has these flavors of appreciative joy, of loving kindness, and of compassion in it, in a nascent form, in that at any moment these three are there as seeds, and they are ready to sprout and to flower. So the equanimity is not I don't care, whether it goes well or not. So it's not indifference, nor is it a stuck kind of an equanimity where it's so important for me to be equanimous that, don't ruffle me, don't make me go too high. I don't want to go, feel too bad, right? It's not an equanimity that is self-protective. It is not an equanimity that's clinging to the middle line, so afraid not to go, not to feel good, not to feel bad. It's not that kind of an equanimity. It's the equanimity that can be present with a wide range, right? So, and in order for that equanimity not to be stuck to equanimity, then it needs to have these seeds of compassion. It needs to have the seed of loving kindness. It needs to have the seed of appreciative joy, so that if the situation calls for it, all of these seeds are ready to sprout and to flower. So these are the four noble abodes. Noble abodes. These are the four places to be in when interacting with people, with what comes up in life. And these are four ways that can be cultivated until there is non-abiding. When there is non-abiding, these are four expressions of non-abiding. These are the four ways in which non-abiding is expressed when dealing with a relative. So that's a bit of a background on these wonderful resources. And so then, I can go into, how we can get in touch with each of these and how we can cultivate each of these. So before I do that, maybe, do you have any questions or little Q&A break before I go into some practices on each of these, so that you can what I want really for you to do is how to touch loving kindness, how to touch each of these, so that you could use them as resources in your practice, as part of your of something that could help in all of the interactions that you have with the people in your life, with what happens in your life. So any questions before I get into that? All right. So maybe we start with the I want to read to you this little excerpt from a book. So typically, the way these four the higher noble abodes are taught, they are taught in a very relational kind of a way, where you say you take loving kindness. you wish yourself true happiness, and you wish somebody else true happiness. And you may start with somebody that's easy to love, and then you wish yourself, and then you wish somebody who's neutral, and then you wish somebody who is hard to love, and then you allow it to just radiate to the whole world. So while this is very, very useful, I would I would fall back on a simpler practice that is there in the sutras, in the middle length or Majjhima Nikaya sutras, and there it is simply the bhikkhu, the monk who's meditating, is simply radiating each of these four attitudes, the four noble attitudes, the four ways of functioning in the world, the four noble abodes, simply radiating these. And but as a precursor to being able to radiate each of these, I would say that first what has to happen is there has to be, before you radiate from your body, the body needs to be filled with each of these four noble attitudes. Sometimes they're called four noble emotions, but I don't know if they are emotions per se. So my attitudes or intentions or wishes. This is kind of a four ways of functioning, and so the first thing to do is to just allow the body to be filled with these qualities, the four noble qualities, and then to radiate them in all 10 directions. The 10 directions are before you, behind you, above you, below you, and to the sides. These are the 10 directions. That's what are the 10 directions? I think the 8 directions cardinally, and then up and down. So then you can radiate in all 10 directions. So let's get in touch with the first two things we're gonna get into touch with are metta or loving kindness, and then karuna or compassion. I'm going to read something to you, and then I'm going to do a nuance between the two, so that you kind of get to. So this reading is from the book Mindfulness, Bliss, and Beyond, a Meditator's Handbook, and this is written by Ajahn Brahm from the Thai forest tradition. So he talks about his surefire way to bring up metta. So this is where you want to go with this practice, that when there's a time where loving kindness would be useful, you can touch it. You can intentionally bring up loving kindness, that you can intentionally touch it. Same way, when the situation calls for compassion, you can intentionally go to compassion. You can intentionally go to appreciative joy. You can intentionally go to equanimity. And why is this important? It is important because we are just practitioners on the path. Every day we have situations where we are not abiding nowhere, giving rise to mind. We are not we are stuck. We are sticking to what we shouldn't be sticking to, and we can see that. And when we can see that, these are tools that we can use that can liberate us from that feeling stuck. In fact, the Buddha in the Majjhima Nikayas, in the middle length discourses, says that these four noble abodes are a way to get rid of taints, to get rid of kleshas, so or to get rid of the stickiness of how we get stuck to the wrong things, and give rise to suffering. So the Buddha recommends these as a way to get out of that state. So let me read this to you from Ajahn Brahm. So he says, so typically instead of spreading metta to yourself first, or to some neutral person, or to somebody you don't get along well with, instead he says, instead begin by spreading loving kindness to something that is easy to ignite with loving kindness. So, and he says, I prepare myself for metta meditation by grounding my mindfulness in the present moment, establishing, he talks about how to establish just the meditation method. And then I initiate metta meditation by imagining a little kitten. I like cats, especially kittens. So my imaginary kitten is to loving kindness as gas is to a flame. I only need to think of my little kitten and my heart lights up with metta. I continue to visualize my imaginary friend, picturing it as abandoned, hungry, and very afraid. In a short span of life, it has only known rejection, violence, and loneliness. I imagine its bones sticking out from its emaciated body, its fur soiled with grime and some blood, and its body rigid with terror. I consider that if I don't care for this vulnerable little being, then no one will, and it'll die such a horrible, lonely, terrified death. I feel that kitten's pain fully in all its forms, and my heart opens up, releasing a flood of compassion. I will care for that kitten. I will protect it and feed it. I imagine myself looking deeply into its anxious eyes, trying to melt its apprehension with the metta flowing through my eyes. I reach out to it slowly, reassuringly, never losing eye contact. Gently, I pick it up. I pick up that little kitten and bring it to my chest. I remove the kitten's cold with the warmth from my own body. I take away its fear with the softness of my embrace. And I feel the kitten's trust grow. I speak to the kitten on my chest. Little being, never feel alone again. Never feel so afraid. I will always look after you. Be your protector and friend. I love you, little kitten. Wherever you go, whatever you do, my heart will always welcome you. I give you my limitless, loving kindness, always. I feel my kitten become warm, relax, and finally purr. So that's how he kindles loving kindness. And here, there's two things he mentions. He mentions compassion and loving kindness. So compassion is that initial phase where you see somebody suffering, and you want that person to be fine, or this being to be fine, and you're ready to act. So compassion, very interestingly, when they measured the brain activity of monks who had practiced the four noble abodes, they found that the particular parts of the brain that are ready to act are primed, and they are, those they really light up. So the compassion is not only wanting this being suffering to be relieved, it's also being ready to act to alleviate the suffering of beings. So here, Ajahn Brahm is picturing an imaginary kitten, and he says that, it's really important to choose an imaginary being. If it's not a kitten that, kitten's not to your liking, just pick some other imaginary being. So he says, my imaginary kitten purrs at the right time and never poops on my lap, right? So choose an imaginary being that just makes you really want, when you see that being suffering, you really want to take care of it, maybe to alleviate the suffering. And there's a couple of nuances here. There is that little grain of equanimity. So here in this imaginary scenario, Ajahn Brahm is looking at that kitten. At no point is he saying that, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. I cannot do anything to help this kitten. It's that imaginary being is not in that kind of a state. The imaginary being is in the state where the bodhisattva, that's you, has such a vast view. This is the nuances of compassion. The nuances of compassion is that while there is a relative, the dependent origination, the causes and conditions never fail aspect of this scenario, of this being who is suffering, is very clear to the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva knows how the kitten came to be the way it is right now, and the bodhisattva knows how the suffering can be alleviated. And the bodhisattva knows that suffering is always alleviatable. So a while ago I gave a lecture on the three svabhava, the three ways to look at the relative. So the relative as just the relative, as at phenomena. The relative is that's a kitten, that's an object, and that's the relative aspect of it. And then there is a dependent origination aspect of it, in that this kitten has come to be due to causes and conditions, and the causes and conditions carry forth from here. And the absolute aspect of the phenomena of the kitten is that the kitten has Buddha nature. So the suffering, while the suffering is recognized, the suffering is also impermanent due to causes and conditions, and can be relieved due to causes and conditions as well. So the bodhisattva has this vast view and still feels compassion for this being in front of them. So that is the practice of compassion. The practice of compassion in seeing this imaginary kitten or any imaginary being of your, that works for you, that's hurting. Here, it's emaciated, so thin, having starved, hasn't found food, it's crusted with dirt, and maybe like it's got a couple of wounds, it's hurt, it's bleeding, and poor kitten. And there's suffering, and there's a wish and the confidence that this suffering can be and should be relieved. So all of this is a part of the practice of compassion. And the practice of metta is wishing this kitten to be truly happy. So you could think of this kitten, now it's been bathed and it's been fed, and it's being hugged, and you want this kitten to be happy. this imaginary being, you want this kitten to be happy. And your heart is radiating this wish for this kitten to be happy. So that is loving kindness. So, so you find an imaginary being like this, and it's really you know, maybe this kitten does the trick for you, or maybe it's some other animal of some kind, or some other being of some kind, and you know that when you picture this being, your heart, you know, fills with love, fills with compassion, and boom, it's like he says, right, when he thinks of his imaginary kitten, it's like pouring gas on flame. It just like catches fire. So all of a sudden, it's like you go out into the sun and you put on your sunglasses. It's like this. You're walking into a situation, and you can turn on loving kindness. You can turn on compassion, and it really, really helps. So just as a daily life example, I have a teenager. My son is a high schooler, and you know, he's in his room often, room door closed. So before I knock, that's my checklist. Compassionate heart on, check, and then knock, knock, knock. It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference to just tune in to compassion, to tune in to loving kindness. It makes a huge difference. So it's a very useful set of qualities to cultivate. So I would like us to do like a short meditation where we experience, because it's about experiencing this in your body. What does it feel like in your body when compassion is turned on? What does it feel like in your body when loving kindness is turned on? And I do want to talk about the bodhisattva view of loving kindness as well. So the mundane loving kindness would be like, oh my gosh, I want this little cat to be happy. I want nothing to, I don't want it to, go out into the street and get hurt. So there's a little bit of a, fear associated with this wish for happiness that you may have for people in your life, or for pets in your life. So it's not that kind of a fearful, limited, loving kindness, wish for happiness. So there's this other name for these four. That the other name is the four immeasurables. So this is this wish without boundaries, without limit. So it's not limited by fear. It's not limited by clinging. It's not like, oh, I love this person, but I only want them to be friends with me. It's not that kind of a limiting or limited loving kindness. It's like, I want this person, I want this being to truly find happiness. And that happiness is not the limited kind of happiness either. It is unlimited happiness, which means anuttara samyak sambodhi, which means unsurpassed, unequaled awakening. So you want this being to be fully happy in a limitless way. And you're wishing this also in a limitless way. So that's the kind of the loving kindness. So compassion and loving kindness with this vast view, this limitlessness. Okay, so let's bring up this imaginary being, and maybe take a moment to put in the chat what this imaginary being would be for you. Just why not we just try that. What's your imaginary being that you want to practice this with just today? Puppy. Kitten's good. Yes, it's great if it is imaginary, because you don't want some actual, you don't want an actual person, actual pet with all of the problems that it may have. That's a good next step, Tori, to practice with somebody real. It's really good if it's an imaginary cat that's happy when you want it to be happy, for example. All right, awesome. So let's start with those with your imaginary, a fairy. That's wonderful. Imaginary being of your choice. All right, okay. So settle in, allowing your body to rest in whatever position that you're in. Allowing your breath to be free. And bringing to mind this imaginary being. And imagining that this being is hurt, is sad, lonely, maybe even afraid, and so dear, so precious. Maybe even so cute and adorable, but oh my gosh, this little being is hurting, it's suffering. And fully recognizing this suffering. Also get in touch. It's the something in you that wants this being to be free of suffering. There's this wish, you wish that this being is okay again. And you want to help, and you know you can help this being to be free of suffering. Feel your heart melt. Oh, how difficult it is that this being is suffering so badly. How hard it is. Hold that being, comforting that being. But what does it feel like in your body? For your heart to melt, just looking at the suffering of this being. Just wanting this being to be okay again. Holding this being, giving this being comfort, feeling fully the suffering of this being. Being open and being willing to recognize how hard it is for this being. Not holding back, no reservations, fully open to the suffering of this being. But with a view vast, with no fear that you will be overwhelmed with the suffering of this being, able to hold and give comfort while melting in recognizing the suffering of this being. What does it feel like in your body? Where do you feel this compassion, this karuna, this registering the suffering of another being? This openness to the suffering of another being. And as you notice the place in your body where you feel this the most, allow this sensation in your body to expand and fill your entire body and to radiate. Oh, I see your suffering. I recognize your suffering. I wish that your suffering will end. I wish that you'll be free of suffering. Allow this felt sense of compassion to radiate from your body towards this being that you're holding and comforting. And it doesn't stop with that being, but it just radiates. And rest in this limitlessness of compassion. And allow it to gently fade into equanimity. This ability to be with what is. That was there even before, that allowed you to be with the suffering of this being. Now, simply resting in the equanimity. You return to this moment and to our Zoom session. Now, would you mind putting in the chat where you felt this compassion in your body? Where was it strongest? Where were the sensations the strongest? Diaphragm, heart, head all the way to the toes. Heart. Thank you. So now we'll do a metta, or the loving kindness aspect of the same meditation. So settle in again. Allowing the body, mind, breath to settle. And bring to mind this imaginary being that was suffering, that was maybe hungry, emaciated, sad, lonely, hurt, tired. Now this being you've helped this being get comfort, food. Now this being is comfortable. You're holding this being to your heart. And this being is maybe resting, sleeping. And your heart is full of love towards this being. And you're like, little being, I wish you happiness. I see your preciousness. I wish your true happiness. I wish you limitless happiness. And feel this wish for happiness, this loving kindness, this metta, just radiate from you. And nourish this being in front of you. It's like this being in front of you that you're holding is basking in the warmth of the loving kindness that's radiating from you. And allow this loving kindness, just register where you feel this loving kindness in your body the most. Where is it the strongest? And notice that there is no tight or defined boundaries to this loving kindness, that it can flow into the rest of your body, just like it is radiating towards this being in front of you. It could radiate through your whole body. And it can overflow from your body and radiate in all 10 directions, all of the 8 directions of the compass, and above and below. Radiate this loving kindness, limitless. And allow this loving kindness to gently fade into equanimity. The very same equanimity that allowed you to express the loving kindness in the first place, that allowed the loving kindness to be immeasurable, the basis for the loving kindness. And return to this moment in our class. And again, the same question for you. Where did you feel this loving kindness the most? If you could put something in the chat. chest, heart, hands, the entire body and beyond. Heart. Thank you. So now we'll do a little meditation on the appreciative joy. So with the appreciative joy, again, you can bring to mind an imaginary being who you're really happy with. It could be just the same little imaginary being, maybe that little kitten now. It's like all fine, comforted, and it's like playing so cutely, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're so happy that it is happy. That's appreciative joy. Or it could be appreciative joy about something so beautiful, something that's so beautiful in nature. It could be something like that also. So maybe we'll continue in the imaginary being, with that same imaginary being, and we'll have an appreciative joy exercise with the imaginary being. So settle in again. And bring to mind this imaginary being. This imaginary being that was hurt, sad, lonely. It's now been taken care of. You've not only relieved it of suffering and you wished it well, it is in fact well. And it is having such a wonderful time. Playful, rolling around, enjoying itself. So happy, jumping with joy. And when you see this, oh, what a lovely sight it is to behold. How beautiful. How lovely it is to see this being who was hurting so badly now be so happy. How lovely it is. Oh. And you feel this appreciation, this joy in the joy of another overwhelm you, your whole body full of this appreciation, this reflected happiness that may be even more sublime than the happiness of this imaginary being in front of you. Your being, your whole body fills with this joy. And it radiates without measure in all 10 directions, around you, above you, below you. All appreciation, all appreciative joy. Beam this joy out without measure. Without reservation. And allow this appreciative joy to settle and become aware of the equanimity that made it possible. the underlying equanimity that supported this ability to feel this joy on behalf of another. And rest in this equanimity. And return to this moment and our time with our class. Okay, same question again. Where did you feel this appreciative joy? Chest, heart. So now maybe you can come off mute and, hopefully I want to hear from you on stories as same as last time. But equanimity went out the window. All right. So what was it like for you? I mean, there's different flavors. All of these are heart opening. I hope you experienced. All of you said heart. So many of you heart, chest. Hands are the ways we put all of these into action. So I hope you found these heart opening, and I hope you can see that these can be so valuable. If these are radio stations that you can tune into, and if you become very adept at tuning into these radio stations, then what happens? What happens is before I knock on my son's door, I can turn my heart on. Maybe that's when I noticed that, hey, it wasn't on. Oh, well, that's for another time. More practice needed. But I have the ability to touch on compassion, on loving kindness, on appreciative joy and underlying equanimity. And the beauty of this is that sometimes with our practice, we think that it's all about equanimity. And so we say, I've got to be like equanimous. And sometimes that's not the best way to be equanimous. Sometimes it's easier to start with compassion or to start with loving kindness or appreciative joy. And to know that there's equanimity underneath that. And sometimes the situation is calling for an expression of equanimity in one of these three flavors. So, yeah, it's time for you to share. And let's hear from you. Of course, questions are welcome as well. And maybe it was hard for you to get out of some of these, maybe you just wanted to stay there. I mean, I was doing like a 5-minute quick thing, but when you're practicing on your own, take all of the time that you'd like to. Shloka.
Thank you, Santa. This was really, really wonderful. And it was so nice to be able to tune into these different feelings. And I was wondering if it's possible to also practice equanimity like we did these three, because I think that's the hardest part for me. I mostly.
Yes, it is the hardest part, but anytime that you do meditation where you're letting what comes up just go, that you're practicing equanimity. So the reason I didn't do a special thing on equanimity is that you're practicing equanimity, with most of the other kinds of meditations that you do.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and also it's very important to note that when you're practicing equanimity, that equanimity is the basis for which, these three noble qualities can arise and should arise to meet the occasion. So it's important to not have this constricted view of what it means to be equanimous.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Ian.
Hello, Santha.
Hey.
The thing that really was a bit of a standout to me was that, we began in equanimity and we did the exercise and then we returned to equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
But having applied these various things, the feeling of equanimity beforehand and afterward was very different. There was a substantial change.
Mm-hmm.
And that there was a coloring involved, not
Yes.
to detract or take away from equanimity as equanimity, but to just be able to demonstrate that these things could also be held and maintained in equanimity.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And so the Buddha, one way, he talks about cultivating these four noble abodes separately, and he also talks about it as he puts it in the progression of the path, of the meditative journey, and where he puts it in the jhanas, which are the meditative absorptions, he puts it, you get to equanimity and then you practice these four noble abodes, and then you go further in the progressive path. So there's precedent for what you're observing in that. You begin with equanimity, and it enhances and it enhances equanimity as well, and it brings equanimity into activity in different ways as well, doesn't it? Oh, you are on mute, Ian.
Yes, absolutely. It shows that equanimity it has infinite dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Sheng?
Excellent.
Hey.
Today's topic kind of matches what I've been thinking lately about compassion and equanimity. And from what I learned, when the nature is seen, like Gilbert said, probably the practitioner don't see the whole mind. But to me, I think at least the quality of the mind is seen. Naturally, the practitioner come back after the seeing the nature experience will come back, let's say, to the mundane life. But he naturally have the desire to perfect that wisdom. And but this time, what the difference is, because of the equanimity, because what he's seen, he the world.
Sorry, you broke up just a bit, Weishan, because of what he's seen.
Oh, because what he saw, but he sees, I believe, in equanimity. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. But this time when he want to go back to perfect that wisdom that was realized, he or she doesn't make a distinction between himself and or herself and others. That desire to go back to perfect the wisdom or liberation this time, on the second time around, they will try to bring not only himself or herself, but also everybody else to a perfection. I think that effort and that desire, I would like to call it compassion. That's my understanding and related to today's class. That's for the day.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Hi, Tori.
Thank you, Sandra, for the wonderful practice. And I realized that sometimes I would do similar practice, but I didn't realize it's so similar. Is that because I'm a mental health counselor, and sometimes there'll be days that are just very difficult for me. And I would do that practice just naturally, just kind of visualize that, I want the clients to be well, even though they're very difficult or resisting or whatever it is, right? Whatever the situation. And I would imagine myself be having this light, and I will give that light to them. And so in this wish that, I just want to give to them. And I realized that this is charging me as well. So it's just like so full of energy that it's like head to toes, especially the heart. And I just feel like everything's just like expanding outwardly. It's just incredible. And it's stronger than normally when I practice on my own. And like that's why I said equanimity went out a window, and reminded me of that. I don't know if there's an actual story, but when I'm doing the Chinese Buddhist class on not every Sunday, I mean like every other Sunday in the my local branch here in Los Angeles, one of the 法师, she said that Bodhisattva, maybe there'll be like a being from a realm, say either like a ghost realm or hell realm, and ask Bodhisattva, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. Can you trade place with me? And Bodhisattva said, sure, of course. And that's when I feel like this imaginary being that I'm helping, right? And I would say, yeah, I'll trade place with you. I'll trade your suffering. That's fine. And that's why I believe that the equanimity will come in, because if I really trade with someone, say from hell, I have to have that equanimity, or else I will be suffering. But then, I don't think I'm there yet.
Right. Yeah. So maybe a little bit of a nuance there. So I want to first touch on how you're radiating. When you're practicing with a client, you're radiating. I want to kind of underline that you're radiating, and you're wishing them well, but it's also helping you. Sometimes people may practice this in a way that is they are just like giving the imaginary being or whoever it is in front of them. They are giving loving kindness, they're giving compassion, and somehow they're doing it in such a way that drains their batteries. So it's important that the Four Noble Abodes are not that. So if you find your batteries are being drained, then just go back and that feel it in your body, fill your body and radiate. So that's I just wanted to touch on that, because you're talking about being in a profession where you're providing compassion. That's your profession, and a lot of caregiving professions, people they burn out, and they burn out when they leave themselves in that donut hole of compassion I've talked about, where you're radiating compassion towards everybody else, but you're in the you're not a part of that. So that's one thing I wanted to just touch on because of what you said. The next thing, what the Fascia said about exchanging, that's not quite the right. I hate to say right and wrong, but it's okay. Let's put it this way: that's not as skillful as saying that you want to be like Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva, Disangpusa, who will go to hell to help the beings of hell. Right? If you want to make an aspiration to being Disangpusa. Right? So Disangpusa is not going to hell and saying, I'll exchange your suffering for no. Disangpusa knows that the suffering is illusory. Disangpusa is there to help the beings in the hell realm with their suffering. Yes, so if you want to make an aspiration, you can make an but that's a heavy aspiration too. Mm-hmm. The aspiration to be like Disangpusa is a heavy aspiration. You could begin with whatever is accessible to you right now. I mean, as a mental health professional, you're already helping beings who feel like they are in the hell realm often. So start with what's accessible to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
You're welcome. Hi, Rongchan.
Hi, Sandra.
Hey.
I think because we all have attended a lot of Dharma talk. In this scenario, I always put myself in a much bigger mind ground that the beings are equal, beings of one nature, and there's no difference between larger beings and smaller beings, or a human being versus any other beings. In daily life, I have a few instances of try to take up the box or sometimes a large ant from my house out to the yard. Realize that they are panic. And last time I have experience of taking up a large ant, very large ant, and running very fast. But if I don't catch it, it will get somewhere and get lost, and it will die. So I have to find I have to put myself in the situation of the ant and try to use a very soft tissue, and then to let the ant climb to the tissue and then quickly run away. I know that the ant is panic also because it's somebody is carrying the ant, it's running away. I think in any situation, whether I don't have experience of handling with the spiritual beings, but I do have experience of handling. Like my wife asked me to watch over when we have quite a lot of steamed peanuts try to be dry up in the sun, and then she would tell me to keep strong eyes, very close eyes, making sure birds don't take too many of them. And I try to see at least have them have a little bit of taste, so that they also know what the steamed peanut tastes like. But you cannot let them all take all of it away. I think that compassion, whatever, but it is not at a basic level. It's not difficult. But if you talk about equanimity, I think it's almost like meditation. I mean, it's almost like you put yourself away, that this is only one world, one mind, and I think we can do it better. I mean, it's not out of consciousness, it's out of your true mind. Yeah, so this is how I do it. I think just mean what I call, put the biggest self away and then let the mind handle it.
Yeah. That's good. That's the non-abiding. right? So from the non-abiding, functioning from the non-abiding, the Four Noble Abodes are just the right functioning of mind. So when there is something to be appreciated, it will be appreciated. When there's suffering, compassion will arise. When there is, when there's a being, then there's a being in front of you. There's always a wish for that being to find true happiness, right? And there's equanimity always. So from non-abiding, it's just a natural functioning of mind that these four arise. All right. All right. Anybody else wants to say anything? Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for joining class today. Join Palms and Pow. Have a wonderful evening. And those of you in Taiwan, have a wonderful day.